Are you ready to unleash your full potential and become unstoppable in your success and leadership?
Welcome to the Unleashed and Unstoppable podcast, where we provide powerful insights and strategies for coaches, corporate leaders, and entrepreneurs. I'm Alexanne Carter.
And I'm Carol Register, and we're certified master neurocoaches who are passionate about helping you overcome your limiting beliefs and optimize your performance.
Each week, we'll be sharing actionable tips and strategies using neuroscience, from interviews with industry experts to solo episodes, to help you lead a life of power, purpose, and possibility on your own terms.
Join our community of like-minded individuals. Hit subscribe now, and let's be unleashed and unstoppable together.
Hey, leader, welcome. I am so excited to dive into a conversation with Gaia Ferreira, all about tight leadership, secrets to leading a life that matters. Gaia helps business owners and entrepreneurs avoid breakdowns. Through deep inner work, she addresses the values and belief systems that create the fear and courage from which we operate. Her work focuses on discovering your inner purpose, gaining clarity into the unconscious patterns that hold you back, and creating new ways to lead with authenticity. I love Gaia. We have so much in common, and I just can't wait to dive into this concept of tight leadership today. So welcome.
Thank you, Alex. I'm so happy to be here.
So tight leadership, what exactly is this Titan leadership, and how do you define it?
Awesome. So Titan is an acronym for people who use their total intelligence to achieve nirvana. So nirvana being the Buddhist word for bliss, happiness, joy, fulfillment. And, I've taken a little bit of liberty on what the word nirvana means, but it really is that ideal state of existence where we are living in joy, we're living in fulfillment, knowing that the life that we lead has meaning and is having a positive impact. And total intelligence is the method that I use, that I've created, where we start off by really understanding who we are at the unconscious level. So we have an identity, and there's two parts of that identity. There's that part of us that we know we are, like that little voice inside of us that's always telling us what to do and what we want truly. And then there's that other louder voice that uses logic and past examples and the voice of our mother or fifth grade teacher, or whoever it is, right, to tell us something else. And our inner conflict or our inner peace depends a lot on one of those two voices we operate from. So total intelligence is really about understanding where are we living or showing up from the learned part of us versus the authentic part of us, and bringing ourselves to a point of awareness, because awareness means free will. So in a moment of decision, you're either creating the pattern, like recreating the pattern and reinforcing it, or you're taking a new decision. And in the new decision, the big question is, what do I do if I don't repeat the past? So that's where we go into the mind, which is how we think, the heart, which is how we feel, the spirit, which is how we sense, the body, which is how we do, our behavior, which is how we adapt, and our language, which is how we communicate.
I love that. I love that. The whole, encompassing the whole entire body, right? And, I do a lot of this work as well with my clients. And sometimes I'm like, it's like having the devil on your shoulder, right? And you have like the angel on your shoulder, right? Which are like competing because, it's like, what you want. And then, as you said, you have all these past experiences that have served you up until a certain point, but they're not necessarily going to serve you to where you are going, right? And that next level and where you're taking your leadership. So yeah, I love that you dive into that. And I've never heard it presented like that. And it's such a beautiful way to combine the whole body into the leadership.
Yes, it's about alignment with ourselves within, so that we are leading from the heart, not a spreadsheet. Right? We're leading from the impact we want to make, not from the numbers we want to achieve. The numbers come from impact. The numbers come from being aligned. The numbers come from doing a good job. But the impact doesn't necessarily come from numbers.
Well, that's
actually one way. It doesn't work.
Where I was going to say, like with the alignment piece, right? Because alignment is so important for those who are listening today. Can you speak into alignment a little bit and help them create that alignment? Because alignment, when we look at being a bold leader, right? And that creating that irresistibly bold leadership, creating alignment is such a a huge part of that, right? So what can you speak into to help those that are listening create that alignment? As you said, right now, it's not just about the numbers and what's on the spreadsheet. It is truly being aligned. And once you're in an alignment, then that result will then come, right?
Right. So what is alignment? So if you think of alignment is what the word in itself means, a straight line. Like this is aligned with this. This is not aligned, right? But that's what we do to ourselves. We have this simple way to get from point A to point B, and we convolute it with all these ideas and thoughts and emotions and expectations and all the stuff that the world has thrown at us, life has thrown at us. And then that alignment is harder to find because of all the noise, right? Our parents, for instance, they raised us with love. No matter whether our relationship was good or bad, or our childhood was good or bad, our parents were doing the best they could with what they had. But most parents are also human beings who are not fully, who haven't done a lot of work or whatever. And especially like the older we are, the less child psychology was available back in their days, right? So we have been raised by, I don't like this term, but let's call them like broken people who weren't fully whole or weren't fully aware of themselves either, right? So then what does that create in us? That creates in us a perspective on life that we believe is truth, but is actually just somebody else's pain. And this comes from our parents, our friends, our family, everybody who's ever cared for us, our teachers, our bosses. And alignment is a way for us to start stripping all of that away and finding our own clear path to point B. But it's also in our leadership so important because it means we're not paying the pain forward. We're actually leading from a place of who we are or the values that matter to us. So to put this in a different way, we all operate from our values, from what matters to us. Most people, until they've done the work, they're not really clear on what those values are. So they might say something like, I really value my family. But then weekends are spent on the phone, answering emails, right? That's not valuing family. That's believing you do and convincing yourself that the vehicle of working all the time so you have money to provide in a bigger house and blah, 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 is good for your kids, right? So we have an idea of what our values are, which may or may not be true. But then the other part is that we don't always use the right methodology to fulfill our values. So alignment is really putting all of that into perspective, into awareness, so that we are operating in a way that brings more inner peace because we know we are being true to our authentic self versus living the expected identity.
And I love how you're leaning into that because it really does tie in with the alignment of how you get to create that life of purpose, right? That life, that fully fulfilled life, because you are living in alignment. And I love how you lean in the value of family, because a lot of times that's what a lot of people will say, right? Like family is number one, but yet you're right. Like your actions are not necessarily in alignment to demonstrate that value, that family is your number one value. And so getting clear on those values, I think, is so important. And then it's not just getting clear, but also looking at how you're showing up, the actions that you're taking. Are they now creating that and showing that value? And it's powerful too with your leadership as well, right? Because it's sort of the thing of practicing what you're preaching, right? And you want to model that for those that you're leading around you, right? And I know I've been so guilty living out of alignment and having the spreadsheet, right? Having the numbers sort of take over. So what would you say to those who are like, okay, I'm hearing you. Yes, I'm guilty. I say that my family is my number one value, but definitely my actions are not showing that. What would you say to help them get back in alignment almost, right? To where they are really practicing kind of what they preach and living by what is important to them?
Well, the first step is really an exercise in awareness. Like if you are saying one thing and you're not getting the result you want, before you look and blame the other person, look at yourself, at your own behavior, at the words you're choosing, at the energy you're putting into those words, at all the different ways that instruction may be playing out or not playing out in your own role model life. Because as leaders, that's what we are. We're role models, right? We're influencers by default. We are leaders are people who can influence action in others, not from where we are, but from where they are. So if we represent a certain value, like understanding, right? Like we pride ourselves on how empathic or how compassionate we are for someone else, then that needs to show up in all areas of life. If we suddenly start to justify or dismiss somebody else's behavior, we're no longer in alignment with what we've said. And that gives the other person permission not to do it either. So company culture is a great way to, a great platform to see where our alignment is out of, or where our words are out of alignment with ourselves. Because the culture that we create in a business is actually reflective of what we tolerate or don't tolerate. So, for instance, if you have a team that arrives late, badmouths, team members or whatever, if that's being like shown in the culture, then we have to ask ourselves as leaders, what are we tolerating? What are we influencing? What is the role model or the role modeling that we're doing? Because it's being picked up somewhere.
And it's that mirror reflection too, right? Like that's what's coming to mind as you're speaking into that, is really that mirror reflection, the feedback that we can get from those around us. So yeah, no, that's, and it comes from the awareness piece, as you're saying, right? It starts with being aware and then seeking that feedback, looking for that information. So yeah, that's very powerful and always really good feedback for the leader, right, to receive.
The thing is this, right? When we're doing this kind of work, like I don't do work like, it's not like a business coach or an executive coach, which have their place, right? Like the work that I focus on is really on the individual and what's going on inside that leader, inside that decision maker. Because everything we have outside of ourselves is a reflection of what's going on inside of ourselves. So we are the creators of our own reality. But the level to which that has meaning, I think a lot of people don't quite understand, right? We like, if you're on social media, you've heard this before, right? We are the creators of our own reality. What does that actually mean? It's the energy that's behind our existence, our words, our actions, our behavior, our thoughts. The energy meaning the intent. So if we say they're nice words, but we don't really mean them, or we know we're lying because we're asking that of them, but we're not doing it ourselves, like, even in the microsecond of knowing that it's not really true to us, there's a wave that gets put out. And that, we've all seen waves in the ocean, right? They get bigger, they ripple bigger as they go out, right? And that's what we're doing. When we're not in alignment, we're rippling out that alignment or that misalignment to the other people. So alignment or working is ultimately an ongoing exercise of self-awareness.
I love that. An ongoing exercise of self-awareness. And everything you're speaking about is exactly, when I look back on my own personal journey as a leader, what was missing, right? I just kept doing more, thinking it was about what I was doing, and completely disconnected it to the being piece. Of course, it required me to burn out and then do all this learning after the fact, right? Which is, how I'm here today and putting these events together, and have built also my coaching business as well. But I think that what you're leaning into is so impactful and important for the listener to hear, right? It goes back to exactly, it's this programming, right? And it's worked up until now, but there's patterns that are going on inside of your brain that impact the decisions you make, the actions you take, and then ultimately the results that you create. And it's not necessarily about more grinding and more doing, right? About the spreadsheet and the data and the numbers. Yes, that's information on the logical side, but there's also going back to the being piece. And, something I speak into often as well is like, when we were born on this planet, we were born as human beings, not human doings, right? And I think we get lost, especially as leaders, because there are certain expectations, right? There are certain demands, there are certain results and measurements that, yes, we do get to reach. And as you said earlier, Gaia, like it comes. But when you get lost in that, in all the, sort of the kind of the chaos of it all, right? Like I'm always thinking this like massive, like knot, right? And you're like, I don't even know where to start to get out of, right? It's very different than when, as you said, like that straight line from A to B. our brain likes to overcomplicate it. That's why we're going in a million directions and all over here, because our brain's just trying to keep us safe. And we are operating from the past and what has served us. I mean, it has served us, and getting to lean into something like the, the Titan leadership. I love how it then really allows you to kind of break it down step by step and to have experienced that shift and experience that transformation into that next level leader. So looking at the Titan leadership a little bit more, I guess, how do you become a Titan leader, right? Like, I think the way that you outlined it was so beautiful. And I'm sure there's a lot of listeners thinking, well, how do I, because I mean, it's an automatic, right? Like how we're operating right now is an automation. So how do we break free from that and then level up to being that Titan leader?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in 1 second. I do want to make one other point first in alignment with what we were just talking about. And that is like just a conscious awareness, right? When we are out of alignment, or actually, let's say this a different way. Every thought that we have has an emotional imprint in us, whether we are consciously aware of it or whether it's just a little hit that we've learned to ignore, right? Some people have a harder time talking in emotional words, right? But either way, it's still happening inside of us. Now, what happens is when we have an emotional hit internally, our brain releases the associated hormone for it. That hormone creates it releases into our bloodstream. And so if you're in adrenaline or cortisol, we know that's stress. If you're in serotonin, that's happiness. If you're in oxytocin, that's nurturing, right? So all our hormones have an expressive behavioral or mood that it gets released into our bloodstream. That bloodstream then is being released through all of our organs. And over time, a repeated emotion is a repeated release of hormones. It's a repeated chemistry in our bodies, and it creates eventually physical ailments that are in correspondence with our emotional things. So that's why, in a way, alignment is so important, because alignment is inner peace. Alignment is harmony. It's happiness. It's joy. And when we're not living in that state, we're living in a state of stress, adrenaline, overwhelm, whatever the other side of the coin might look for you. And that is having a negative impact in our body. If we were given a Ferrari at birth and we treated like, I don't know, a secondhand tricycle, we're never going to get anywhere effectively, right? It needs high performance fuel, not some kind of diesel oil, right? So this is part of the reason why it's so important to really remember that we are Titans from birth, and we've learned not to be. And so how do we become a Titan? Okay, so on your own, it's really to start becoming super aware with that little hit that's going on in the background. Where are the moments that you feel internal friction, internal conflict, internal incongruence? And being honest with yourself. The world around you doesn't need to know what's going on. This is about you. And every time you feel that little tinge, just ask yourself what's going on. What is the emotion I'm feeling? And that emotion, what is the thought it's leading to? And what is the thought creating in an action or a strategy or a decision? And just start there, right? Emotions, thoughts, actions. And start to, on the spot where possible, but after the fact if you can, or preempting if that's the best you can do, start just changing the micro behaviors that are within your responsibility or within your charge. I don't like the word control, because we're never in control of anything. We only have the illusion of control, but we could be in charge of ourselves and responsible for ourselves. Now, the other way is obviously to, call me, sign up with me, have a complimentary call with me, and sign up to one of my programs. Then we can really speed along the process.
Well, I was just going to say that, right? Because have someone who does this work as well. I know we can only go so far on our own, and it takes, in order to get to that next level, right? It's getting to the source of it, right? These are blind spots. I think that's why we get to lean into, we are operating because of what we know, right? And we don't know what we don't know. And oftentimes those are the blind spots. And it's the power of working with a coach. It's the power of working with someone who can spot those blind spots that can help you lean into that and truly break free from it. And it's fascinating because we have we have so many neurons firing every second, right? Every minute, every day. And so to even be able to intercept a lot of that is not necessarily something that we're taught and that we're necessarily aware of, right? So it is a part of identifying, for sure. That's the first step. But in order to actually be able to, neutralize and erase, it's be able to work with somebody who can help you with that. And that was one of, leaning back, you said earlier about, the difference between necessarily an executive coach or a business coach. And I had worked with a coach as well, was that it was very surface level. It was very Band-Aid solutions. But Band-Aid solutions is not going to give you that total transformation, right? That long-term, I was going to say experience, but it is the long-term transformation and the long-term results, right? To what you're trying to create. So
it's about addressing the root cause, not the symptoms.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a lot of coaches work on the symptoms. So they work on the headache, but they don't work on what's going on behind the scenes, right? So take 2 pills, call me in the morning kind of thing, versus, okay, let's figure out what's going on that's creating all these headaches. That's really where I work at the root cause level.
I'm thinking about in a garden where you have all the weeds, right? You can chop a weed off, but it'll just keep growing. You've got to actually get to the root of the weed and actually pull the weed right out so that the root no longer exists, right? So I'm very visual. That just kind of came to mind as we were talking, because I think that's what we tend to do, right? We just try to chop it off thinking I don't see it anymore, but the root still exists and it's going to eventually come back until you completely remove it. Right. So yeah, I love this topic. I'm sure we could talk more and more about this. So as we sort of wrap up here and looking at the Titan leadership and looking at living in alignment, getting clear on your values, what's really important to you, and just creating that awareness piece, what are some of the other things that you're seeing for leaders that can help them really stand in that irresistible, bold leadership? You talked a little bit earlier about sort of the workplace and the environment and things like that, but other topics that, are really important when looking at the outside environment, right? And things that you can lean into as a leader to help shift the environment so that it is a more positive, joyful experience versus a more toxic place that you're working in.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that I would recommend to all leaders is make time for yourself first. So when you're planning your day, your month, your week, or your quarter, your year, first block out your personal time. I call it vacuum time or Titan time. It has to be time where you're kind of in a vacuum space. There's no external noise or information coming in at all. Even music is external information, right? Because music evokes emotions, right? Or reminds us of something. Or so even I'm talking about full vacuum, right? So that you can be just you and your thoughts. Grab a notebook, or Notion is a great app to do this, right? And just think with yourself, feel with yourself, sense with yourself what is going on for you right now, and what is that you want from the week. Again, this is not about specific results. It's not about okay, we're going to grow 20% the next quarter, but it's more about in the next quarter, how do I want to grow? How do I want my team to grow? What is the next level up for us in the experience, right? In the evolution, the tangible rewards will come from the growth. The growth will not necessarily come from the results. So it's important to do it in the right order, because we want our team to keep growing with us. The other element is one of the exercises I do with my clients right in the beginning is to look at their team and who has to go. Who is the first person that needs to go on their team? The answer is the leader, because everything that happens in the company is the result of where the leader is at, right? So you have to be willing to fire yourself. And that doesn't necessarily mean don't show up to work tomorrow. It just means really look at yourself and what are you bringing to the equation? And then in your team, who is playing along and who isn't, right? But again, it's not about blaming someone who's not performing. It's about looking at ourselves first and asking ourselves, how am I allowing this person to do this? Or what am I role modeling that has led to this person believing they can do this, right? It's important to have community of like-minded individuals with the same evolutionary goals. And again, I use the word evolution, not tangible results, because it's about the growth of life, our personal growth of life. It's not about the spreadsheet, right? So we want people who are going to drive us to being better leaders, not better performers. The performance will come automatically. Good food, good fresh air, good vitamin D, lots and lots of snuggles with your loved ones, and activity, physical activity. Like, I'm not a gym person, but I love hiking. So whatever you prefer, do that. It doesn't matter, as long as you're really getting some physical activity in there to raise your heart rate and give you something that's for your body, for your body's well-being.
I love that. I love that because, again, these are some of the hard lessons I learned after the burnout piece, right? And some of, like, what you're speaking into is exactly basically what, my therapist kind of prescribed after the fact, right? It's like creating this kind of white space, right? Where you do get to just switch off and be, creating that time to really, like, I always talk about, like, paying yourself first, right? Looking at your sleep, looking at your exercise, your movements, how you doing things that you love and fueling yourself. And then the fuel piece of not just nutrition piece, but also how you fueling your mind and your brain and working through, what's coming up for you. And again, it's that creating that space for that. Right. So I love as we get to remind the leaders and how the leader is the first that we get to fire. That's, someone, I think one of my mentors said, you want to build somebody up so they can be replaceable. Like, that you're doing a really good job. Like you can, it's a good feedback of, like, really looking at yourself. And again, as you're saying, looking at your team members, and are you really helping them grow and expand? And it's a journey, right? It's a journey. It's a process. It's not like this is the end and this is the end and this is the end, right? You get to become the person in the process of whatever you're working towards. So I love that word evolution. I think it's so powerful and impactful that get to embody that more versus just like the goal and the end target. It's a whole encompassing experience, as you shared earlier. So on your journey, I'm really curious to know, is there anything right now that you're like, man, I really wish I knew this sooner? Or as you're working with clients as well, noticing, things that just as you're noticing their journey and process, like, if leaders just knew this one thing sooner, leadership could be transformed, or leaders would experience less burnout, right? And experience more fulfillment of happiness and joy in their lives.
So it's going to sound like a cliche because, again, a lot of people are talking about this, but I've seriously experienced it in the last 3 years, to the point where it's not just something I know, but it's something I know, and that is that everything is always going to happen in its divine time with the right people, in the right way. And I do not need to worry ever. My job and every leader's job is not to control the heck out of occurrences so that things happen in a box. My job is to be very clear on the impact or the outcome, the ultimate outcome I want to have, and trust that I will get there no matter what the path looks like. So, and I think everybody knows this at some level. We've all had poop that we didn't want happen, but on the other side, we got the result in an even better or, quicker or more efficient way, right? So we know this is always going on for us. And yet, as humans, what do? We still try to control. And in control, we're like this. And in surrender, we're like this, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like when you get in the car, and if you want to go from, Toronto to Los Angeles, right? You can plot out the exact line and roads and the restaurants and the pit stops you're going to take. And that could be a good trip. It'll be stressful if you run into traffic, potholes, tumbled trees or whatever.
Train strikes.
You can say, exactly. Or you can just say, I'm going to get to Los Angeles and I'll just take whatever road comes. You're going to get there anyways. And that's the trust we need to develop. So we're going to arrive at our destination anyways. Just release some of the control on the day-to-day journey so we can enjoy ourselves more. We're not here as humans to do, as you said earlier, right? I honestly, truly believe with all my heart of hearts that we are here as human beings just to have fun. And so we're going to go through the experience of life, the good, the bad, the ugly, no matter what. In the moment of decision, You can choose to go at it with stress and pain and sorrow and anger and fear and all of that fun stuff. Or you can go with gratitude, acceptance, and joy. And personally, I choose joy. I invite everybody to choose joy.
Well, I was, been doing a lot of training with teams lately and leaning into is like, it gets to be fun, right? Like, how do we get to create this to be fun? And it really is on the other side of that control. And again, very guilty, everything you're saying, Gaia, like I have been there. And that was, on the, I guess you could call like the leadership transformational journey that I embarked on again, after my burnout, right? Because the burnout was very, very eye-opening and really looked at assessing and understanding like what happened, right? Like what went wrong essentially was my question. And then to learn all about our brains and how we operate and the identity piece and the value piece, and the alignment piece, and basically everything we've talked about today is like been all like after the fact of the burnout. And one of the I think, I don't say it's the hardest lessons, but one of the things of leaning into of being able to trust and surrender, right? Especially if we are, you're having me laugh because I remember some of my couple first trips to Europe, right? Which was totally mapped out, every location, where we're staying. It was color coordinated by country. And then, we hit train strikes and we hit, broken down buses, and we experienced like all of the things that we could have experienced. And it's funny how, because of that, we got to experience a whole other journey. And in fact, part of the highlights of the trips were in those moments of kind of breakdown. We got to meet more people and we got to have some more amazing experiences that we never would have had of if we had totally kept to that fully like the spreadsheet, right? It's going back to the spreadsheet, right? And just, laughing at the whole journey.
Yeah, but if I may, like, what are the two top needs for human behavior, right? It's a need for significance. I matter. What I say is going to be heard. People are paying attention to me, and I can do it my way, right? Yeah. And certainty, which is control. It's routine. It's knowing what's coming next, and right. And the certainty is super, super powerful because it keeps us safe. It keeps our physical body safe. And underneath it all, we're all just trying to survive, right? We're still got that instinct from the caveman days. That is running the operating system. I'm laughing at you because, I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing with you, but because the intentional words. Okay. Because I'm one of I look at some of my friends and, I have these amazing trips. For me, travel is so important. And I have 3 kids. I'm a single mom, I travel the world with them. And when the 4 of us travel, me and my kids, it's like a party. But when I travel with other adults, I think a lot of people get really stressed out traveling with me because for me, my only goal is to arrive at the plane on the last day with all my limbs intact and a bucket full of stories to tell, right? Yeah. If I've succeeded that, it's been a good trip. So I never plan anything. I'm always open to experiencing life. And like you said, right? Like it's in those moments of being in a foreign country, you don't speak the language, you've gotten sick from the food or whatever, that you really get to experience humanity at its best. Yeah. You get to experience kindness and love and openness and sharing. And all of that is also available in business. But we shut ourselves off to it because we're so hard, like we're so trying to control every little aspect. And I'm saying, let's crack that box open. Let's have fun. Let's trust the process. Aim for the ultimate outcome, which is getting back on that plane with your full, all your limbs and your bucket full of stories, right? Like that's the end outcome. Like I was 96 years old, and I'm like, just talking to my great grandchildren about all the amazing fun I've had, right? But how am I getting there bit by bit? I'll leave that up to the universe. I'll leave that up to life and all the experiences that are waiting for me.
And when you are able to trust and surrender, and that's a big thing that for me, for what I'd invite into the listener to lean into is that trust and surrender. And just little by little, right? Because a part of it is also trusting that when you trust and surrender, like that everything falls into place. Something that my sort of saying that I keep saying to myself, reminding the clients as well as you're talking into like the divine timing is just that you are exactly where you're meant to be, right? At this moment, right? And to me, just even trusting that piece. Right. And just and being present, being in the moment, being present and connected with what is happening. Because that's another part of always running with this agenda in mind. When you can just let go of that, I'm always about this, right? Letting go of that agenda and just being and trusting. And it's habits, right? There are muscles, especially up until you've operated so much in control up until now. And yeah, there's still moments, but I love that invitation, Gaia, because that is looking at the alignment piece, the values piece, creating the fun piece and the joy piece and the happiness piece, because it's when we're trying to hold on so tight that we're creating all of these other feelings. Whereas just a matter of going like this and just doing that, all of a sudden, you feel the release. And so I know that's oftentimes, even with clients talking about that, just hold on really, really tight and then let go. And just, you feel that release. And it just, I don't know, to me, it's such a nice feeling to just feel that release of let go. And then, yeah, it's all going to work out. It is all going to work out.
Exactly. And those moments, just to highlight back, because those moments you're saying, when you're burnt out is not a sign of stress. It's a sign that you're not having enough fun. You're not doing enough of what lights you up. So if you feel burnt out, that's the notification, the ping of your body saying, stop, and go do something that lights you up. It doesn't matter what it is. Go cook with your kid, go paint with a friend, go for a hike in the forest, whatever it is, just do something that lights you up and do it consistently. And stress is usually a ping notification that an expectation you have is not being represented in reality. And so that whole idea of you're where you're meant to be right now, people understand that, but they struggle with that because it's not where they want to be. Mm-hmm. It's where they're meant to be. And the painful part of that is accepting that maybe you had the wrong idea. Maybe your expectation was for someone else, but not for you. But you are where you're meant to be. And if you can release the expectation, be aware that it was an expectation, not reality, then you can open yourself up to acknowledging and seeing the gifts of where you are. Mm-hmm. And that is how you release the tension. It's how you release the stress. Because when you clear away the limitation, you open yourself up to opportunity.
And leading into that gift piece, I love that. Just the gift piece. And speaking of gifts, this is a great transition because I know that you have a gift for the audience. But before we get there, just to sit with what you just said, right? And I know, especially leaders are oftentimes very high achieving, right? And it is run by expectation. It is run by, again, driven by results. So being able to just be, right? Going back to the human being versus that human doing, look for those gifts, right? Look for those lessons. Look for what gets to take place that you... Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say that. Yeah, the unexpected surprises, right? Because I think the other thing that often holds us back is when we're not open and we're trying to be full in control, we miss that. We miss those gifts. We miss those lessons. We miss those opportunities, and we miss the joy that gets to also unravel itself through those moments, right? So, yeah, I've loved this conversation, Gaia. It's not talked enough, I often say, in leadership, right? We get to have more leaders that are standing for this in leadership, which is, we're leaning into this irresistible, bold leadership to create that piece, right? Create the lovingness piece and the daring piece so that you can still create that impact and live this life of joy and happiness and fulfillment and that bliss that you've talked about today, right? So it's so beautiful. So speaking of your gifts, I know that you have a gift for the audience. Want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's called the Leader Meter Quiz, and it's free. And it's a quick 30-second, seven question quiz. And what it'll allow you to do is discover your number one challenge to success as a leader. Mm-hmm. So when you take the quiz, you're going to go through the 7 questions. It takes about 30 seconds. And on the flip side, you're going to get a quick 10-minute video that's going to highlight your unique results. So in other words, the gifts that you naturally have, the gifts that you have already developed or that have come in with you that are supporting your leadership, and also that thing you want to look out for that's holding you back, because we all have them, right? Like you talked about before, we have blind spots, and that's where we want to have some highlights. So I always say that a jar can't read its own label, and this Leader meter quiz is a way for you to find out whether you're strawberry jam or double chocolate fudge.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here today with us. Thank you as well to the listener for listening in. And hopefully, you've been able to take away some great insights and some next steps of where you get to go to level up in your leadership, to become that Titan leader, and where to go to create more joy and happiness in your life. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. It's been wonderful.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Unleashed Unstoppable podcast with your hosts, Alexandra Carter and Carol Register.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review, and subscribe.
That's all for this episode, Wildly Ambitious Leaders. See you next week.